There are things that are hard, and then there are things that feel impossible. Talking to loved ones about death surely fits into the latter. But that's no reason not to do it, says our next guest, Yvonne Heath. She's been a nurse for 25 years and is the author of Love Your Life to Death, How to Plan and Prepare for End of Life so you can live fully now. And Yvonne Heath joins us now. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Nam. It's great to be here.
It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you.
You start the book by talking about a father and daughter named Homer and Sue. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us that story?
It's such an amazing story, and when I first started thinking about the fact that I wanted to write a book, which I had never even so much as journaled, so it was really a frightening thing, thinking, why do I think I can do this? But I knew I wanted to share people's stories. I didn't want surveys and statistics. So I put out one email and I said, would anybody share a wonderful story with me about getting through grief or a good death or anything? And then I just waited. And
who did you email?
I sent it out to everybody I knew, nurses, friends, family, and then I thought, okay, and I said to my husband, Jordy, I don't even know if people will share their stories with me. And the stories came pouring in. One of the first people that came to my house, and it was funny because it was late, it was winter, and Sue came to visit, and she even had her puppy because she couldn't leave it alone. She said, I don't know why I'm here sharing this story, but I'm going to tell you about my dad. And I fell in love with the story. I feel like he's my good friend. He's part of my legacy now, and his name was Homer. And at the age of 17, he lost his sight, but that did not stop him from living his life fully. Not only he married, they had 5 children, he blazed a trail for people with any disabilities, and he lived his life fully. And then when he knew he was dying, he said, no more treatment, it's time to plan my death. And he did so many beautiful things for his family. He wrote out letters for them to read after he died. He had lockets engraved for his wife and his daughters. And he even had his daughter Sue practice the eulogy that he wrote, as he did not want anyone putting words in his mouth. He had her bring a tie to the hospital so he could knot it properly, pick a new suit so he could look sharp at his visitation. So the family had nothing left to do when he died but grieve. And what a beautiful gift. And his 2 daughters were at his side when he died. And I always try to tell this story without crying. I've told it so many times and it still chokes me up, because when, his daughter Sue was a nurse, so she knew that the end was near as his breathing became shallower, and she told her sister, it's okay, this is part of the process. And then she looked at him and said, Dad, jump. And her sister was confused at first, and then she said, yeah, Dad, jump.
Which means go.
Yes,
it's time to
just
go.
It's time. And with his loving daughters by his side, holding his hand, he did.
I'm getting...
I know. So can we get through this without... I do every time. It's such a beautiful story.
Well, I wanted to read a passage from the book.
Mm-hmm.
You write, Homer lived a good life and a good death. Mm-hmm. This is a kind of peace and acceptance I wish for everyone. But sadly, it is not always so. In more than 25 years as a nurse, I have often witnessed our society's death phobia and how our reluctance to talk about, plan and prepare for grief, death, and dying causes excessive suffering in our lives and at the end of our lives. Mm-hmm. What makes a good death?
A good death is something, it's so personal, and that is truly the thing that I need people to understand. What a good death would be to you and your loved ones could be completely different from what I value and I believe. And so that's where I urge people to have these conversations and discuss your values and your beliefs and what would be important to you at the end of your life. The other important thing that people really need to consider is your loved ones are going to have to carry on with their lives. And wouldn't it be a wonderful gift to say, I've lived a good life and this is what would be important to me, but what would be important to you as well at that time, because you're going to have to move through your grief. What would be important to you? And having that conversation and making peace with the fact that everyone that lives dies, everything that we love. But
I think we all know that, right? But we don't want to talk about it.
We don't want to acknowledge it.
Yes, because before the show, I shared with you that when I got the book, I was like, oh, I don't want to read this because it's talking about death, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it.
No.
But then afterwards, it gave me a lot of great insight.
Yes.
You used to be a nurse. How did you go from being a nurse to writing this book? What was your motivation?
Well, in my many years, I've worked in every department from the delivery room to palliative care, chemotherapy, and hospice. And I've witnessed people who shared their wishes at end of life with their families, and they made peace with the fact that they were dying, and it didn't matter what age they were. There were people that were in their 90s that were not ready, and they died angry, and their families suffered so much more. But even like in the book, I shared Kevin's story, who was in his 40s, and I said he was dying, and he just said, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And I said, "Kevin, like how are you at peace with this?" Mm-hmm. But he wanted that for his family. He wanted them to be able to move through their grief, you know. So when you, like you said, you didn't want to read it at first, but I say, imagine grieving and someone has a diagnosis or is facing, even becoming elderly, you know. Like people say to me, "Well, aren't you talking to the senior citizens?" Well, I want to talk to the young people as well, because here's another fact, is we don't all die of old age. We don't all have a warning. We don't all die of disease. Right. And do we not suffer more when someone, you know, we feel like they haven't had a chance to live their life? They die in their children, 20s, 30s. People die at all ages. And wouldn't it be in our best interest to prepare long before we're facing it?
So what do you think makes people reluctant to plan the end of their life?
Well, we're not, as a society, we have sanitized our society, because people used to die at home, right? So we didn't have a choice, we didn't have an option. And then funeral homes became part of our society, and nursing homes, our elderly used to live with us. So we've slowly pushed it all away. And also, of course, we have medical technology where we feel we can cure anything, and that is not the case. And so we've raised the bar on longevity and lowered it on quality of life. So quantity of life has become more important, because we've become so busy also that we never feel satisfied, right? So I think, well, what is the legacy that you want to leave? And if you died tomorrow, what would you want? How would you want your family to carry on? And so I'm saying to my children and my family, you know, I'm 51. But you can say,
"You look great. You look amazing."
So, yeah.
You didn't have to prompt me at all.
Yeah, I know, that was perfect. But you know, I want my children to know my legacy is love, laughter, and being the change I wanted to see in the world. And I have lived a full life, and I love my life, and I'm so pleased that I'm thrilled that I've had children. I've married my soulmate. I've done all these wonderful things, and I've taken this leap to do what was really calling me. And that was, you asked me that question a long time ago. I don't think I answered it. I was getting anxious in my career, and I wanted to do something, and I wanted to be a voice for the change. And, you know, I was a person, people always think, "Oh, Yvonne, she could do this because, you know, it's kind of loud and wild and crazy on the dance floor." But that's very different than feeling like you have a really important message to share with the world. And 5 years ago, you couldn't have convinced me, A, that I would write a book. I'm not qualified, or be able to sit here. But it's passion that, and you know, finding that it's like, this is what I am, my purpose for the second half of my life.
Was there a particular person or something that happened to lead you on this road to say, "This is what I want to do"?
I just knew at age 50 I would change my career somehow. And as I watched the good deaths and the suffering, and people, it didn't matter what their age was, it didn't matter what the circumstance was. That's what we can choose, right? We can't always choose how we die, when we die, but we can choose what we do with that.
That's really important.
Yes.
And you do have a choice.
Yes, we always have a choice. We don't always have a choice about what we wish we had a choice about. You see, that's the difference. And I've watched, like Kevin, who said, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And he died a beautiful, graceful death, and his family, his mother said, "I am able to go on because of him." He made sure I could. And do you know what she does now? Right. She's a volunteer at hospice, because she wants to help other people have a good death. I mean, extraordinary. That is an incredible gift we can give people.
From your experience, who's more reluctant to plan the death? Is it the person that's dying or the family?
It is often the family, because we sort of feed into each other's fear. Of course, the patient doesn't want to die, but then the family is absolutely unwilling to let go. And so I've had many many patients have come to me sort of on the side and say, I'm so tired of this treatment. I don't want another blood transfusion. I don't want another chemotherapy treatment. And I would say, well, then why are you doing this? And they say, my family's not ready.
And you call it the talk. The talk.
Yes.
So under what circumstances should be people having these conversations?
I think the talk should be anything, like, we all have to have the talk about, I just had to have it about puberty with kids. And it's so awkward at first. But there are teachable moments. They arrive all along the path of life, and we just have to listen out for them, right? Like in the book, I talk about our pug Frankie who died, and that was an incredible learning opportunity for my children to be a part of it, and to know that their hearts felt so broken at that time, and that we were able to we just grieved freely. I mean, we just cried, and we were so sad, and everybody grieved differently, and we helped each other through it. And then I said, isn't it wonderful how your heart's healed? And so I think that the talk should never have to be a big reveal. As I say in my book, the best time to talk about, plan, and prepare for grief, death, and dying is when we are young and healthy, and the next best time is now. When's the best time to start the talk? Now. Not Christmas morning, maybe, not someone's birthday party. Like, hey, we should start this talk. It's like, but we're celebrating. But just start to have it. And it's like a rusty wheel. The more, you just get it started, and suddenly many times it just starts to flow out. And if someone isn't sick or dying, you can have banter, and you can, tease each other. And if you don't do what I want, I'll haunt you. And, like my father-in-law wants bagpipes and a parade going down Main Street when he dies. And we're like, really? You think we're going to do that? But you don't do that if someone's dying, right?
Was there ever a time that we just accepted death as the way things are?
Well, I think back in the day when we didn't have another option, right? And again, of course, we were farming communities, so life and death and birth all happened at home. And, we didn't have the medical technology to fix everything, right? So the doctor came with his little bag, and even with in birth and in death, did the best he could. And, if things didn't turn out the way everyone wished and somebody died, we just took care of it at home. Now, we also didn't talk to our children or talk about all of these things and their feelings. So they may have suffered silently, but we couldn't escape the physical part of dying. Now we can escape the talk and dealing with the physicality of it. People die in the intensive care unit. Many people who have said they do not wish to die in an intensive care end up dying there, attached to all kinds of machines and everything, because people are, again, they haven't had the conversation before. And then children don't, go into the intensive care, so they never even see their loved one again.
How important is it for children to be exposed to death?
I think we should always tell the truth. And I think, like I said, with my children who are Jane and Tanner, Tyler's 22, so Jane and Tanner who are 11, they've been a part of this journey. And they've gone to visitations and funerals right from the time they were little, because it's just a natural part of how we are raising them, that, and when I hear, like, when they say the question, when are you going to die? I say, I have no idea, actually. And I've heard parents say, oh, don't worry, it won't be for a long time. And you don't know that. And I say, I aspire to live till I'm 120, and I'm going to keep on going. But, I don't know, but I want you to know that we can always stay connected. I'll always live in your hearts. We've talked about it so many times. They've said, I know, Mom, you'll live in our hearts. We'll stay connected forever. I get it. Yeah. Because we choose to believe that. And I say to them, choose to believe something that will create comfort in your life, And
how do you think hospice and palliative care facilities have made us feel about death?
I think that is a wonderful, amazing movement. I worked at our in Huntsville, our local residential hospice, and I said, first time I walked in, it's like, wow, this is way nicer than my house. It's a beautiful and extraordinary place. I think the best place truly to die is at home, but that's not always possible. And I think that the residential hospices, it's a wonderful. Everybody just takes good care of everyone, but it isn't available everywhere. And the truth of the matter is, as our baby boomers are aging and everything, there isn't enough room. There aren't enough hospices. So we need to get our communities, the people outside of that, feeling comfortable with being a part of this. maybe at home with hospice volunteers. And you know, we don't always need a medical person. We need people to be comfortable with this. People are so uncomfortable. The name of my talk when I do speaking engagements is, I don't know what to say.
Really?
Right? Oh, absolutely. That's, you know, somebody, oh, you know, Joe's wife just died. There he is. I don't know what to say. I just say that. Just show up for them. And that's what I say. You know what the magic formula is when people are grieving or dying? Just show up, because life goes on and the other things go on. So if a wife is at home taking care of her dying husband, the garbage still needs to go out.
Food needs to be made.
Food needs to be made. The dog needs to be walked. Go cut the grass. Go just do something wonderful for them. It doesn't have to cost you anything. It doesn't have to be extraordinary. But you know, I know there was one lady that her sister didn't know what to do when her sister's son died. She said, I just went over and cut the grass, you know, and she knew.
Just be present.
Just be present. Right. Just show up. Just show up.
We live in a world where we're so connected. Well, we feel like we're connected with social media. What roles has technology played in our views on death?
Well, I think that sometimes when everyone seems obsessed with these shows where there's murders and all the, you know, stranglings and all of these horrific things, and I think it gives us a false sense that we're dealing with death, you know, and able to cope with it. And then when it arrives, you think, I am not prepared at all. And these violent games and everything, it just kind of frightens me, because I just think it's a false sense of dealing with it, I think, somehow. Yeah.
Well, Pia Chattopadhyay had an interview last year with the historian Yuval Noah Harari on the concept of immortalism. Let's take a look.
Now, in the last few centuries, science came up with this new view of death, that death is basically just a technical problem, not a metaphysical issue. People die not because the gods said so. People die because their heart stops pumping blood, or because an artery is clogged, or because there are cancerous cells in the liver, or whatever. These are all technical problems. And the idea of science is that every technical problem has a technical solution. Maybe we don't know the solution yet, but we are working on it, and eventually we will find cure to all these problems, all these diseases, illnesses, and so forth, and we can overcome old age and death.
So while we might not be immortal, scientists are working on making us immortal. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think that as our society, as I've said, we raise the bar. We want to live a really long life, and that to us means we've lived a full life. And I don't really know how I feel about that, because you know, living fully and living a long life are two very different things. I've known people who have lived into their 90s and above or older that still feel dissatisfied with the lives they've had. Because
so what is living fully then?
Living fully is following your bliss, following what is calling you inside. We also get very busy and we don't listen to what is inside saying, you know, I want to do this. Like I said, I don't know, I need to do something. And I said, great, I love to have deep, meaningful conversations. How am I supposed to have a life doing that? And here I am. And I feel like at 51, I've lived a wonderful, full life. I don't feel like I need to live to 150. And then I kind of feel like as we teach our children and their children, and we're supposed to pass the baton on for them to continue. And if we all continue to live, we're going to get really crowded.
So from your point of view, it's not about longevity.
No.
It's about the quality. So you could live for 20 great years as opposed to 120 not so great years.
Absolutely. I just one lady who just died who was 48. I mean, her and her husband traveled all over the world. She did everything she wanted, and of course she wanted to live longer, but that wasn't an option. So she planned her own funeral. She asked people to speak at her funeral. She lived a full life in 48 years. And I know people who are 98 and said all they ever did was complain and push everybody away and didn't live a full life. being here longer doesn't mean you're going to be satisfied.
So do you think maybe that's why people panic at the end of life? Because
Absolutely.
they feel like if they had one more year, they could get it right?
Yes.
Instead of having a good death, as you say?
Absolutely. And when I say, I also, as I've written on my bookmark, what will your legacy be? And legacy is something we should build and think about our whole lives, because I think that you want to have this wonderful legacy and you want people to remember you in a positive way. But everywhere you go, every person you touch, every person you speak to, you're leaving a little bit of your legacy. When you walk out of the room, are they saying, oh, thank goodness she's gone? Or, wow, that was I'm glad I met her. And if we do that along our lives, we can feel good about what we've done. And, and of course, there's regret. If you, oh, I really should have done this, and I should have forgiven this person. I wish they would have forgiven me. Do it now, and you will have less regret, because we do not know how long we are here, and we need to stop pretending that we all die of old age.
I always find that it's hard to regret something you've done, even if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
You've done it.
You've done it, but do something different next time, or learn from it and change the next time.
What are some of the questions we should be asking people when it comes to ending their life?
When it comes to ending their life, you mean at end of life, which, well, again, that's I think that each and every person needs to sort of step back and give themselves that time, say, what do I believe about life and death? And what do I value the most? And what would a good death look like to me? And I think we need to start with having the conversation with ourselves first, you see, and then we will be so much more comfortable having it with other people. Because, and I wish as a healthcare professional, we're not really trained that well. I mean, palliative care nurses and hospice nurses are the experts, but they're not everywhere. If we ask ourselves first, then what I could say to you, well, Nam, this is what I did, and this is what I thought about, and this is the legacy I want to leave, and then that gets the other person thinking. Everyone just needs to start a conversation with themselves first about what they value, what is important to them, and it also gets you, again, start to think about living that life fully.
We talked a little bit about how to talk to kids about end of life. How do you suggest people go about having that conversation?
Well, again, if someone is dying, you mean, and it's so difficult, because I say, to have those conversations before they're facing it is that much easier. But I tell people, let yourself off the hook and just tell the truth. Tell the truth. If somebody has to talk to a child about a cancer, and I'm not an expert, and I don't claim to be an expert with children, but allow them to ask the questions they want to ask. And if you say, Mommy has cancer, and this is, I don't exactly know what's going to happen, but this is what I know, and yes, I'm a little nervous. And I just think hiding anything from children know something is going on, and children, they need to grieve as well, even if things turn out, in a positive way, how wonderful. But they should be a part of that process too. And of course, get professional help and get professional advice, but tell the truth.
Well, in the book you write about the death of one of your family pets. What lessons can we draw upon the death of a pet?
I think it's such an incredible opportunity, not that you want your pet to die, but it's funny because it was the first time I had gone through it with the kids. And the big thing we did, and we're doing we have a black lab now named Cuba, who is 12, and he's lumpy and he's getting weaker. And so we sit with the kids and say, okay, guys, Cuba's going to be facing end of life soon, and we need to give him extra love and tell him how much he's meant to us. Tell him all those things. Tell him all the things that you want him to know. And so they are doing that. So I get choked up again. They're doing that now, and maybe he'll live another month to a year, maybe, but they won't have the regret. And then with Frankie, I created this Marley and me scene because I came home and she was dying and everyone's sleeping, and I was like, oh, my dog's dying. And I was out loud saying, I need to create a good death. And I, grabbed her and hugged her and told her she was a good dog. And I was so sorry. I always said she smelled and I didn't mean it. And she did. And, just loved her right till the end of her life. And in the morning I said to the kids, I am so happy we gave Frankie so much extra love in these last months, because last night I was with her and I held her and she did die. And I mean, I was a mess, and they
But
were
they
crying.
saw it happen. They didn't just wake up and they had a new pet. That
No,
looked like theirs.
and they were part of the process, and we just, allowed the grief. And then, like I said, now I said, isn't it wonderful that we can speak about her and how funny she was without that pain, because our heart healed. It's got a little scar, a little Frankie scar on it, but it healed.
We had a visual artist, Tava Harrison, on last spring, and she was diagnosed with incurable breast cancer at just age 37.
Yeah.
And here she is talking with Steve Paikin about how she plans on having the talk with her husband about the end of her life.
It's quite possible that I'll get to a point where the pain is too much, and I make a choice to expedite the end, but I'm not anywhere near there.
Have you had that conversation with it? This is terrible. I'm asking very personal questions here, but
They're relevant.
they're in the book. I mean, have you had that conversation with David yet?
No. And I feel that I will probably be ready to have the conversation before he's ready to have the conversation.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but what do you think of what Tava said?
Well, it just speaks to the fact that we don't all die of old age, and wouldn't it be if they had had that conversation long before a diagnosis, it would be so much less painful for both of them, right? And I think it's amazing that she's written a book and shared that. She's helping people with what she's going through, and I think that is amazing. But here she is, 37, and she was healthy and had no idea this was coming. So if we have the talk before a diagnosis, we will suffer less.
Yvonne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm
It's a pleasure
sure
being
your
here.
words have helped a lot of people, myself included.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being here.
Pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.